Welcome to the AI Energy and Climate Podcast, a special series from the DSR Network hosted by David Sandalow.
Hi, I'm David Sandalow, and this is the AI Energy and Climate Podcast. AI is developing most rapidly in the US, China, and Europe, three places where 100% or very close to 100% of the households have access to electricity. But in other parts of the world, in particular Africa and South Asia, more than 1 billion people live without dependable access to electric power. This lack of electricity condemns countless people to poverty and in many ways distances them from the modern world. Fixing this problem is a profound global challenge and I believe a moral imperative. So can AI help? Or will AI make inequality worse and exacerbate the digital divide? These are hugely important questions. And I'm honored and delighted to have a global leader on these topics with us today. Damilola Ogunbiyi is CEO and Special Representative of the UN Secretary General for Sustainable Energy for All and co-chair of UN Energy. She's received countless awards, including being recognized by Time Magazine last year as one of 20 Titans of the Climate. Prior to joining SE for All, Ms. Ogunbiyi was the first female managing director of the Nigerian Rural Electrification Agency, where she initiated the Nigerian electrification project. Damilola, so good to see you. Welcome to the AI Energy and Climate Podcast.
Thank you, David. I'm excited to be here.
Well, thanks for joining us. And as I was saying, you've led major energy access initiatives globally, from your work in Nigeria to your leadership at the UN and SE for All. Maybe just to start, what inspired you to work on energy access issues?
I mean, I'm from Nigeria, which unfortunately is the largest population globally that has an access divide, with almost 40% or just over 40% people not having access to electricity. So that's obviously something that you see every day. But what really got me interested was that I saw the direct link between energy poverty and just living a dignified life. And there was no way that you could look at people being alleviated from poverty if they were still in energy poverty. So that's what, got me excited. The other thing that got me excited was that there was technologies that allowed us to not just focus on very large grids, which we still need, but also focus on decentralized energy solutions using cleaner energy. And then finally, I felt that it was one of the few aspects of our lives and a few jobs that allowed kind of an even playing field for gender. It could be a real role having females in and renewables, especially females for the global south, of which I represent. So anything that, allows more women to come in is technology focused and really focused on living a prosperous life. I'm normally in for that. It's also the icing on the cake that this is the way to improve the planet and put climate as a focus as well.
You mentioned technology very centrally in your answer, and one of the big technology developments, maybe the biggest technology development in the past several years, has been this explosive growth in artificial intelligence, and certainly been a huge topic of conversation in the United States and energy policy world and globally in many respects. But I wonder, at Sustainable Energy for All and within the world of people working on energy access, how much is AI an important part of the conversation today?
I mean, it's critical. I mean, there are two aspects of it, right? There's the AI tools that you can use to predict how much energy is needed, how much finance is needed, what type of blended types of finance is needed to make sure the people who don't have access to electricity, or over the 2 billion people who don't have access to clean cooking, get it. So there's that conversation. The second conversation is just how much more energy you would need for this AI revolution. You probably know better than me, but it's 20 to 30x the amount of energy that you would typically use from 5G to really, really build the scale. That's more energy. And if there's more energy, you want it to be cleaner, more sustainable, renewable, but not just renewable, you want it to be carbon free. So there's two sides of that conversation. And then finally, the third side is that how do you incorporate it that this now becomes a leader in helping us with the energy transition instead of just building a larger divide of people using more energy, getting access to all the AI tools, and then people becoming poorer and poorer, which is what we're seeing now. So it's those three aspects of it that make AI exciting for me, but also a little bit frightening, and I think that's common for all of us.
Yeah. Let's take each of those. I wonder, you started talking about the potential for AI to help address energy access issues. Have you seen any examples in your work or anything you particularly point to where you think AI has been particularly helpful?
Absolutely. I mean, if I even look back from my work when I was in Nigeria, one of the things I was tasked to do is what is the most effective way to provide access to electricity for 90 million people. For that to happen, it's not just kind of geospatial plans. You need to be able to predict what they're using energy for now, but what is it going to be like in 25 years? So we're already using AI without really thinking about it as AI. And I always tell people that, when they say AI or not, I'm like, you've always been using it, at least in the last 5 years, but you haven't been thinking that you're using AI. It's just now that it's been given some type of name. It's been really, really useful in terms of the predictability, in terms of not just how much people want to spend in energy, but how much the affordability is as well. Because there's a clear difference that people forget. There's how much people can afford, but how much they want to spend, right? And then taking examples of what they spend money on every day instead of household appliances, but more important, household groceries. But more important, like what they spend on their phone bill, what do they spend on things like that allows us to have almost like a natural, using energy as maybe a natural credit rating for people who you feel are bottom of the pyramid and they don't have stuff. So for me, it's just super exciting. The predictability, if that makes any sense, allows us to not waste, right? Because we just don't have the time to try things if it doesn't work out. And we have such a limited amount of money. I think AI will help us to be a little bit more exact in how we move forward. In sustainable energy for all, probably like three aspects that we use it for. We use it for our energy transition and investment planning. We use it for our integrated energy plans that we do with sovereigns. And increasingly, we're using it with some of the work we're doing with IBM and also Google. Like, what does carbon free electricity really look like? And what are the tools that you can literally help cities, help them plan, their energy transition? I think, David, it's so important that a lot of people, when they hear energy transition, it seems like you're going from something to something else. That's not what it is for a lot of countries in the global south, right? The energy transition means a lot more energy, right? It means that I'm going to 20 to 40x the amount of energy I'm using currently. That's what it is. And that's why we keep on saying that energy access is key to energy transition. And we all have a global choice. That can happen with fossil fuels, or it can happen with cleaner energy. And I think the AI tools are allowing us to price it, understand it, the policies that we're getting out of it, is just really important. Sorry, another thing that I forgot to mention is it's also helped us in our climate finance work. We've been working for a couple of years for something called African Carbon Market Initiative. And what AI has allowed us to do is help countries with their carbon market frameworks and also identify all the other policies they might have to hinder them from having a proper carbon market environment. So AI has played at least since I've been CEO, has been played quite a critical role, because everything we do is data driven. And if you say you're focused on data and you're not doing AI, it's very a bit strange to me on how you are maximizing the effect and the impact and the data you have to have for the sovereigns and the most vulnerable people.
That's fascinating to hear all those examples, Damilola, and you really focus on data, and data access is central to AI. You can't really do AI without good data. And are there issues with getting enough good, available, accessible data around the developing world, and how do we address those types of issues?
Absolutely. And I also think that what people tend to not realize is that you also have to work with the countries and you have to work in country, right? So I'm not going to develop an energy transition plan for Kenya or Nigeria or Ghana without sitting with government officials to make sure they understand that process as well. There's a lot of things that you just can't do in geospatial work, a lot of data you have to collect on the field. But again, that's really exciting for me because it's almost making the collection of data, the use of data, the interpretation of data a profession on its own. It's a job on its own. So, but there is that lack of information because the institutions as well have not been built for the energy transition. They have really, really been built for conventional uses of energy.
I wonder too about the people and the personnel training side of this. We did this report called the Artificial Intelligence for Climate Change Mitigation Roadmap, focusing in particular on the use of AI for climate. One of our conclusions was that the principal barriers to the use of AI for those purposes, the lack of data and the lack of trained personnel. And I wonder when it comes to energy access issues, is there a challenge in getting enough people trained on these topics, and how can that be addressed?
No, absolutely. Again, for energy access, look at it two ways. There's the training to understand the tools and the modeling, but there's also training for the teams to actually execute on the projects on ground. Because it doesn't matter how great the tools are and the plans. If it's not connecting anybody to clean energy, then I'm not sure we should be doing it. I don't believe in getting data for the sake of getting data. I believe data should translate into policies and into translate into investment decisions that make projects happen to make sure people get access to electricity. So when you look at it in that realm, there are different parts of capacity building you need. For us, because all our models are open source, there are no paywalls, we actually take people from each of the countries and each of the ministries to train them. And then we also train the private sector that's doing the work as well. But you can't underestimate training, and training isn't a one off. Capacity building is something you continuously do. I feel that, and even as an organization, we should be continuously trained. I feel people just do one training and they go, but with something like AI that is so dynamic and it changes every moment, you have to continuously be trained. And even someone like myself, I must confess, and I think I reached out to you, David, I was like, how do I do more in this? So as a leader, for me to understand the trends, because a lot of people ask me to teach about stuff, which I'm very, very honored and very privileged to get the opportunity to do. But sometimes people don't understand that you also need to learn so you could be most effective when you're giving advice.
That's so encouraging to hear you say as a leader. And as you said this, I remember you. Thank you. You came to my class at Columbia University and taught my students. So I just want to thank you for that. It was just a tremendous session. But the role of continual training within organizations is central for AI, and I think we're going to see changing workflows in organizations of many different kinds, and that's going to be true in everything from big businesses to big UN organizations to organizations that are delivering help for energy access issues on the ground around the world. So it's encouraging to hear you so focused on that, Damilola. But let's talk about the downsides too, because AI certainly creates some risks, and for decades we've been talking about a digital divide separating the North and the South, and what risks do you see AI creating broadly when it comes to these types of issues?
I think it's just going to exacerbate what we currently have, right? Everyone talks about a digital divide, and sometimes they don't even put energy in the conversation. One of the reasons why there's a digital divide is that there's not enough energy as well. If the amount of energy produced in a country like Senegal is the same amount as people playing games in California, it just shows you just how bad things are. And no one is really talking enough about what we talk about. When I talk about energy access, I don't mean a couple of light bulbs and a charger. I mean energy to do some real productive stuff, which means 20 to 30x the amount of energy currently flowing in Africa today has to come on stream. That is how we're going to have proper digitalization. And that is what that's the only way we can cope. Will there still be a divide? Absolutely. For all the things we said, training, finance, everything. But one thing we know about people in the global south is they're a lot more entrepreneurial and they're a lot more resilient than a lot of us who live in the global north. And if they have a little, there's a lot they can do with it, unlike, unfortunately, I'm here in London where everyone complains about literally everything. And you're like, you have internet, you have power, you have transportation, but everyone is still complaining. And I get that, right? But you're dealing with people who don't even have the privilege to be they're thinking about where the next meal is going to come from, right? So when we gave some women some clean cooking solutions like this battery storage solution, and we linked them up with some internet, they're doing kind of online inventory that I didn't understand how to do. These are women that in any realm you'd have said were illiterate, right? But they're doing systems on their phones and they're connecting to apps and things by just having a little bit of internet service that you provided them. And you just think that when people talk about the leapfrog, no, that is where the leapfrogging is going to happen, right? It's not going to be in formal education systems, right? It's going to be in commerce, it's going to be in SMEs, it's going to be in tech. And that's what we should enable. And that is what is at risk right now. The other thing is at risk is that a lot of people just don't care about a lot of people these days, right? So countries, are focusing more on themselves. Understandably, there's a crisis happening every single day. But once that happens, right, you get more wars going on. You get more issues happening, and it's not beneficial for us globally because climate is one of those key issues that you can't just solve in the global north. It has to be solved in the whole world for us to globally benefit. And I think that's why sometimes when we talk about this divide, it really, really comes to place. I mean, I don't know, David, you might be able to tell me. I don't know any AI centers on my continent, for example. I don't, when people have maybe one course or something in some universities, but education systems, really, really matter. And I was actually telling somebody, because I was saying I was coming on your podcast, that what I enjoyed about the lecture I gave in Colombia with your students was because I felt I was also learning. So sometimes you give speeches all the time and but there's a difference about when you have like just a organic interaction, right? And you're learning as well from future leaders. And we need a little bit more of that, but we need it not just in, very, very good universities like Columbia. We need it all around in different institutions, in different in different fora, right? And you'd be surprised how much of a difference that really makes.
Amen. And let's work together on building that out. And actually, any listeners who are interested in working on bringing these topics kind of around the world and helping train people, please reach out, because I think what you just said is it's so important. And maybe just to build on that for a moment, and the types of partnerships we need. You're building partnerships in your role at SE for All. How do you think partnerships between governments, businesses, universities can help to address these issues?
I mean, one of the partnerships I'm trying to get you, David, as you know, and also Jason Burdoff interested in is what I think is going to be the largest public-private philanthropic partnership, at least of my career, which is Mission 300, which is to provide electricity to 300 million Africans by 2030. This is where all ideas are on the table now, right? You have a cross continent, and when people say, do you think it's going to be achieved, I'm like, do you know what will happen if it's not? Because we always think about it like, do you understand the consequences if we don't achieve it, right? On what it actually does to the global landscape. So again, with all your learnings, all your tools, in universities, I think coming in to say what type of jobs need to be created, what types of people need to be trained, what types of models are they using. Some countries are still modeling on paper, but it's working for them. How do you digitize government to be able to be ready for this? How do you make sure you can localize workforces? How do you make sure you take it from a grant-based business to an economic opportunity? you just can imagine how many solar panels and and inverters and batteries are going to be needed for this type of program. Can there be some local manufacturing? So it's kind of endless for me. As you know, David knows me well. I always have 5,000 ideas that kind of come together in the end in some kind of way. But this is the program. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I did a second term in my institution, because it's a challenge for us globally, but it's just so important. In a time, like I say, that is very polarizing and people are looking inwards. Any kind of creation we can do and bringing really like-minded people together who, like yourself, have done this for decades, right? To be like, let's all focus on solving this for a change, not 50 million things, just this. Was just a challenge that, as Sustainable for Energy for All, this is why we exist.
Well, that's very inspiring, and you've been very generous with your time. You're a busy executive, so I think we need to wrap up, or your staff is going to be angry with me. Um, as you know, we're closing each episode of this podcast with two questions, and the first question is, how are you using AI in your day-to-day life?
I kind of ask my chat GPT pretty much everything I used to ask my Google search, if I'm going to be perfectly honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm waiting for I don't know if you have a better model, the subscription model. I'm waiting for it to be ready in the UK because I think it's been really amazing for me personally. But yeah, that's how I use it in my everyday life, apart from all the energy transition stuff we do for governments as well.
Very interesting. And then final question.
Was it meant to be a personal response or was it meant to be like an SE4 response?
Oh, wait, either one. Either one. How about an SE for all? Are you?
SE4 is all about the integrated energy planning
Uh-huh.
work. And we are looking at it literally every day on how do we improve on the resources, how do we integrate a lot of the telco data and the information data to understand affordability. So that for me is like just really, really fun right now.
Oh, terrific. Well, it's a final question. Any recommendations for books, reports, or articles for our readers? Looking for three recommendations of kind of on any topic, old, and also something old or new from your childhood or something you read yesterday.
Wow, I don't know if it's something I read yesterday. One of the things that I do think is interesting, and I'm going to sound really sad, is the SDG 7 tracking report
Mm,
that the UN and the World Bank brings
mm,
together. So it's SDG 7 tracking. And why I think it's important, this particular report, is this the first time we've gone backwards on our figures. Um, Last year we had about, Robert can correct me, but I think we had about 585 million people who didn't have access. Sorry, 570 million people who didn't have access to electricity from last year's results, which is basically on 2022 timeline. This year we have it at 570 million. That for me is a bit scary because it's finally seeing a little bit of post-COVID figures, but it just means more people are going back into extreme poverty. Um, so
mm.
so that's a bit tough. I think that's kind of the main one. If I wanted anyone to kind of do a takeaway, like please see, understand. It doesn't matter if you're into climate, energy, AI. Understand what's happening globally. And you can also find it on our website at se4.org. I hope I said that right as well. But yeah.
That's sobering, but hugely important. And Damilola Ogunbiyi, thank you for your global leadership on energy access issues, and thank you for joining us on the AI Energy and Climate podcast.
Thank you, David. Keep up the incredible work and look forward to seeing you in person soon.
All best.
Okay.